So welcome everybody, thanks for turning up to this talk. So I am a member of the UNIVERSE-HPC project, but this talk isn't about UNIVERSE-HPC, it's very much about experiences of training, particularly online training, and really driven by what happened in March 2020 when we overnight had to transition from a sort of traditional face-to-face mode of training into online. So this is sort of a personal, reflections, right word, but my personal views on that, how it went and what we've learned and what's going to happen going forward. So I'm really good at structure and timetable. I'll try to, it was pointed out to me that this was really possibly the world's most uninspiring title for a seminar. So we were going to change it. Then we actually noticed that we were getting a lot of registrations from people. So thanks very much for looking beyond the title. So just a brief recap for people who aren't familiar. As Neil said, I work for EPCC and I'm currently Director of Teaching, although my colleague Adam Carter is taking over very shortly. But EPCC has been around for a long time, since 1990, originally the Edinburgh Parallel Computing Centre. I'm not supposed to say that, but it's just EPCC, but there we go. We're part of the University of Edinburgh, up here in Scotland, and self-funded with over 100 full-time staff. And we relocated the base centre here in the centre of town, which is this nice award-winning, I believe, building. And one of the reasons for that was well, A, to be more close together as a centre, but B, to be closer to, we started off as part of physics for historical reasons, but much more aligned with informatics now, and the informatics forum, which is the main informatics building, is just over the courtyard there. What do we do? Well, we have a lot of projects in HPC, data science and software development, supporting UK, I'll say European funding here. That's obviously been a bit sparse recently, maybe it'll pick up again. And EPCC has a long history of two things to maybe differentiated us from other centres, was a lot of focus on working with industry, industrial partners, but also on quality of software development as well, software development practices, not just getting to the solution, but writing high quality code. We run national supercomputer services. We have done for a long time, since one of the first national parallel supercomputers, a Cray T3D, back in 1994, I think. Currently, we run Cirrus, which is a tier 2 system. There's obviously tier 2 systems around at other places in the UK, and we run Archer 2, which is the current national supercomputer. And on my role, we do a lot of education and training. We run these postgraduate master's programs in the HPC, which I'll touch on briefly, but also we do HPC training courses for national services. And most of them, we've been doing that for a long time, but most of those are under the aegis of Archer 2 at the moment. So I don't know, this is a recent slide. It was announced this morning that Edinburgh is going to be the host site, nominated to host the next generation's exascale system, game-changing exascale computer, it says here. There's been a lot, not by me at all, but a lot of preparation and planning by other people to try and get us here, mainly due to infrastructure and such like. And there is actually a video being developed of the ACF, the Advanced Computing Facility, which is about 10 kilometres south of Edinburgh, where the new which will host the exascale system. And someone's colleagues of ours have done some really nice. I think they flew a drone around inside the computer. So there will be a video available very shortly of what these spaces look like. It's really very, so I mean, modern computers are quite boring. They're just cabinets, but the infrastructure is really remarkably impressive when you're talking about many megawatts of power and cooling and such like. It's really, so that was big news just this morning. So what's our training portfolio? What's our experience in some sense? Well, we run this MSc in HPC and HPC data science, which has been going since 2014. The data science, as Neil said, the actual master's has been going since 2001, which is a long time. Our typical intake is we have about 50 on-campus students at the moment who are standard 12 months full-time. And we have 60 students on the online version, which is part-time intermittent. So, that was interesting because, of course, we had to switch from face-to-face to online very short notice with the MSc. We also run courses for UK National HPC Services. We've been doing that on and off since 1994. We're a PRACE training centre, which is a European project for about 10 years from 2012. But as currently, I'm not in charge of the Archer 2 training program directly. My colleague Juan is in charge of that. But we do about 60, 65 days of training per year. Well, sorry, previously, this is historically, mostly face-to-face, some online. Obviously, that's changed. This conference started getting sorry. But this is what we used to do, I guess, prior to COVID. We also have sort of online self-study courses, which are, we'll talk about how these courses are delivered in the online. But under the PRAISE program, we developed a massively open online course for called Supercomputing under the FutureLearn platform, which is the online branch of the Open University. And also we have self-service courses as part of the Archer 2 service, which are currently MPI and OpenMP, and we're about to launch a hands-on introduction to HPC. So we've got quite a lot of training going on, both what you might call training in terms of training courses and education as a master's program. Just read, this is the Archer 2 website. We have a large range of courses. We run more courses than this in general. This is just the ones we run for Archer 2. We kind of categorize them in various categories to give people a pass through. But we go from both introductory courses, which involve carpentry courses and such like, through to quite advanced courses on using HPC applications and efficient use of the supercomputers. So I started, because I'm getting old, when you get old, you like history. I thought it was interesting to look at the history. I say previously, I mean previous, previous to March 2020, when online training was optional, was an option. You could choose to do it or not, basically. It wasn't mandatory. And sometimes I was surprised at how little we did prior to COVID, actually, looking at that, but also how far back it went on. So we actually did an online training course for MPI back in 1997. That's what, 25 years ago, which was a lot of work for the people. I was tangentially involved in that, but I wasn't one of the developers. I'll go through these. So under Archer, which is the previous service to Archer 2, which ran until 2020, we did these called virtual tutorials, which are basically webinars. Again, that seems completely standard now. If someone says, I'm going to do, we're broadcasting this live over Zoom, you wouldn't bat an eyelid at that. But back in 10 years ago, that was quite novel. The technology was quite touchy. And so, at the time, it seemed incredible that only 10 years ago, but doing these online tutorials was seen as relatively novel. I'll talk about the MOOC, massively open online course that we developed. That ran, it's still running, but in a different, its main run was 2017, 2019. And then we did another version of an online MPI course, which was our sort of, and I believe you probably did know the MP version, but I was involved in this one. We ran one of our standard courses, normally given in a face-to-face mode, online. Again, that was probably one of the first synchronous online training we did. These are short sort of seminar type things. This is a multi-day course. So I'll sort of cover these a little bit. So back in 1907, Elspeth Minty and Martin Westhead, working at the time, developed something called MPI Online. And this is a quote from the paper. There's a paper. If you Google this, you'll find there's a paper, various papers on that. And it did seem very novel at the time to use the internet, the World Wide Web, for training. It wasn't live, it was recorded. But now it provides a special multimedia training environment. The course is a slideshow accompanied by a streamed audio soundtrack. And I think they were synchronized somewhere or other. I can't remember. I do remember sitting in a studio with big headphones on, recording some lectures. There was also some animations and such like. And also, so this is our standard programming, basically our MPI course put online. And also there was programming involved. Students could do interactive programming examples, write and run an MPI course. Now, how did that work? Write and run message passing programming. MPI is the standard library for parallel computing, and it's just a library. So you just need a compiler and a version of the library. And it was supported by programming exercises. They were done through a web browser. And actually, it says you can use a web browser like Netscape or Mosaic, which kind of dates back to 1997. But actually, this was really very advanced for its time. It was a lot of work. It's one of these things that now you wouldn't think twice about. It was a lot of work to get going. But the interactive nature, the programming was supported by something which Martin developed called Epic. Epic, I think EPCC, something interactive courseware. Might just be interactive courseware. And I'm no web technology expert, but it had special mind type. But in my mind, it's a very similar model to Jupyter notebooks. You kicked up a browser and you had access to online material. And then at another point, you're running stuff which looks like it's in the browser. It is in the browser, but it's actually being served locally. It's actually just running locally. Somewhere hidden on your laptop, or in those days, your desktop machine, there were files that you were editing. And this was done in using special MIME types. There was some proxy system which intercepted various documents and diverted them to local scripts and such like. When it worked, it was fantastic. It was quite difficult to get to work, so these technologies were so new. But that was very interesting. So this was basically done online. Everything was pre-recorded. There was support for tutor interaction. You could ask questions and such like through a chat room. But actually, if you look at the paper, you'll see that one of the conclusions was that that wasn't very heavily used, and I'll come back to that actually. But this was really very novel at the time. I talked about these virtual tutorials. Again, you would think nothing now of broadcasting a webinar live, but we started doing this back in 2013, 2014 at the start of the Archer service, the predecessor to Archer 2. And we used a system called Blackboard Collaborate. Now, I know most people use Teams or Zoom now. Back then, these weren't available. Blackboard Collaborate was actually part of, we used it because it was supported by the university. It was part of the university's virtual learning environment, BLE, Blackboard Learning Environment, included this live browser-based video conferencing called Blackboard. Again, at the start, it was very twitchy to get going. You had to install some Java stuff. It was all quite, when it worked, it was fine, but there was, it wasn't seamless at all. So it's always a bit stressful doing these things. But the advantage it gave us then, if we just, so these were delivered live using Blackboard Collaborate. What seemed very novel at the time is that, we could host a presentation, and you could watch it in your office, but it could be delivered by a third party person somewhere else. That was the tricky bit to get, both client and server going together. But that was actually, I think, quite novel at the time. It was, again, sign of the times. We used to turn up like half an hour or an hour earlier in the room to make sure everything was working. It was very, 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 very tricky because people weren't using this stuff day to day. We have to have page, how you install the stuff, how it's going to work. It wasn't part of everyday people's day-to-day workflow. And then we recorded all these, and I was surprised when I went to the Archer YouTube channel, which is still there. This is one I gave actually on the meltdown vulnerability, which was big news. What, 7 or 8 years ago? I can't see the date on this. But we did over 100 webinars, and these carry on. On the Archer 2, these virtual tutorials webinars carry on. I'm only talking about the Archer one because I was responsible for them. It's now and this is over. This is completed. This is sort of history, but they're still there. I think the Future Learn MOOC was really, I was quite involved in that. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to make the concept of supercomputing available, understandable by the general public. It was very much an outreach. It grew out of our outreach activities. I'm not talking about here, but EPCC does a lot of outreach activities. A lot of people from EPCC actually down at an event in London, New Scientist Live right now, where we have a little mini supercomputer called the Archie, which is built on a Perspex case. It looks like ORAC from late 70s, you're old, me remember that. But anyway, it's explaining computing to the general public. The interested teenager. It was done on Future Learn, which is, as I said, part of the Open University in some fashion. But the main point was, although it was about supercomputing, it was purely conceptual. So we didn't have to have any issues about how do people do practical examples. There were examples to do, but they were thought experiments, discussions, and such like. So it's a free introduction. Of course, it's still there. You can still study it. And there's videos, articles, quizzes, and discussion boards. The Future Learn platform is very much built around collaboration, getting people involved. So there was quite a lot of guidance from the Open University on how to use it, and everything was about not what this is going to teach people, but how is this going to make people interact? And you could get if you paid money, you could get a certificate. Surprisingly large number of people paid. Hundreds of people paid for this. Largely conceptual. What we did is that the way the Future Learn model works is that these courses they're sort of there all the time. But you launch them. You say within this 5-week window, we're going to run this course. So people go through as a cohort. So a typical run in this period would have about 3,000 people joining, which was expressing interest in the course, and then about 300 people completing. For some definition of completing. Now, this might look like a fairly scary drop-off, but I'll come back to that later on. This was called facilitated mode. So it worked very well. It was a bit of a step out of our comfort zone. But every single page, every article, every document has a discussion board underneath. Make your comments here. And there were lots and lots of comments. You could be on the train, on the bus home, and you could log on your phone, see the comments, and then add comments. You see discussion. You could add comments. It worked really, really well because we had this large group of people who talked to each other, but moving through the course at very much the same period. That course is still running in an unfacilitated mode. That means that it's up there for you to study. But you won't get interaction from tutors. And also we had an Ask an Expert session, things like that, where people would, you say people ask a question or like a question, and at the end of the week, I would answer the most liked question with a little sort of ad hoc video or something like that. So that's me there. I had to wear the same cardigan for about long. So you do this video, and Future Learn has an algorithm for picking a title screen, a title frame from the video, which is designed to make you look as stupid as possible, always blinking with your mouth open, looking half drunk. But it was very. So the thing about this for me is it's completely not an online delivery of a lecture course. It was something the whole platform forced you to do something different. So although there were videos, they were there just to promote discussion, and there were many more articles and questions and quizzes and things. I said it's still right, and also we've repurposed this course, and I think it's about to go live in an open format. This is, you don't have to pay money for this, but it is a closed proprietary format. But we've served up the material in a more open format, which I'll come back to later on. And then I said what we did back in 2018, which again, nowadays you wouldn't even bat an eyelid. That seemed quite novel at the time, was we ran our MPI course, and my colleague Mark Bull, I think, subsequently ran his Open MP course live delivery. So you effectively replicated the classroom that people do now. What we did is we actually based this, there's a big US project called Exceed, which was the US equivalent of the European PRACE project, tying together supercomputer centers. And they had a problem which we didn't really have, which was geography. The US is a very big place, and multiple time zones, and people just couldn't travel to physical courses so much. So what they did, we didn't adopt this, but they very early on in sort of mid 2015 onwards, I think, they had 25 dedicated sites, so you could go and attend them. The model was you went to your local supercomputer center or local university to attend the course, which was delivered remotely. They wanted to have a community feeling, but still delivered remotely. They went to a lot of effort to make sure that you had HD video and high quality audio. This was a big issue 10 years ago, and now you just take it for granted. And you had groups attending each site. And the idea was the local provided basic IT support, logging on, getting your files transferred, maybe compiling and running, but the presenter was there to do the technical support. So we've tried to replicate that, but in the end, we actually we asked for people to offer to host a group, but actually we mainly had individuals attending. So it was a very different format, a more sort of, I guess, relaxed format. I think partly because things had moved on when we did it. So when they did it, they were really concerned that, if you just did it at home, your broadband wouldn't keep up. You'd have a terrible experience. It would break up. You wouldn't be able to stream video at sufficient quality. That had moved on by 2018, and that wasn't an issue. So I ran the MPI course over 4 Wednesday afternoons, and we had about 50 people at the start and about 25 at the end attending. And that was our first experience of online training. And I think that it went fine, but I think I'll come back to this. At the time, what didn't work so well is the practical examples. And I don't think these were illustrated by programming examples. And when you're in a classroom, you have a practical session, you wander around, you chat to people, you help people by looking over their shoulder. That's very, very difficult to replicate online. And we'll come back to that. So, pre-COVID, we already had a large range of delivery mechanisms, but they were still mainly face-to-face. And our Archer, or also the Praise courses then, was a standard course, would be, other than these forays into online training, would be 2 or 3 days intensive delivery in a training room, and typically lecture, practical. Quite an old-fashioned, model of teaching. That's how it was. And so pre-COVID, there's lots of ways you can cut training, and there's many more than 2 axes, but for me, I sort of classified our training into sort of face-to-face and online is kind of fully face-to-face, it's obvious, fully online, it's obvious. And then there's sort of a kind of a gray area in the middle. So for example, an Archer 2 self-service, I'm saying it's fully online because it's sort of asynchronous, it's there all the time. Now, live online courses are kind of in the middle because they require a tutor to present. So that's what. And then no assessment credit bearing up here is an interesting thing. This effectively corresponds also to money. How much do you pay for an Archer 2 or Praise course? Nothing. How much do you pay for an on-campus or online MSc? Quite a bit. So, but I mean, the way these fitted in. So our standard Archer 2 Praise courses are down here. No assessment. You can get a 10th and free and face-to-face. We were doing these live online courses, I said, like MPI, our online MPI course, which were live delivery, but over the web. The Archer 2 self-service course is clearly fully online. The supercomputing MOOC is not, I've put it to the side here because there was tutor interaction. It wasn't, when I say online, this is sort of, how much intervention is there from almost personal effort to run the course. And so I'll come back to these 2 boxes here. We had our standards on campus MSc, which is fully face-to-face. And we also had started then, I think we had our first intake, or very early intake of the online MSc. There's other couple of sort of incidental training that we're involved in. There's an international HPC summer school, which we colleagues have taught out for many years, which and that was something which we would travel somewhere and to give lectures. And we also taught at something called the Cambridge HPC Academy, which is originally an EPSRC project that became self-funding, which was in August. In Cambridge, there was a 2-week intensive HPC program, but I'll say why they're there later on. This one in particular was this used to, okay. So what happened post-COVID? Okay, everything moves online. So our Archer 2 and Praise courses just become these live online courses, which then is live delivery, and then sort of 2-way streaming to help practicals and such like. The on-campus MSc moved to online, not completely online because we still delivered not as online as the online MSc. Our online MSc has pre-recorded videos and content. For our on-campus MSc, when it was online, it was still live delivery. International HPC Summer School became very much like an MSc. We had to do that. I can't remember what the venue was. We did it live. And the Cambridge HPC Autumn Academy, I put here because what they did there, and I'll come back to this, was they had live practicals. You interacted with the students live, but they watched pre-recorded content, which was I'll comment on how that worked. I've seen that used elsewhere. So you would say, watch this video for the next half hour. If you have any questions, ask while the video is going on, and I'll answer them in chat, and then we'll have a Q&A and a practical session at the end. So it was pre-recorded content. So that was the post-COVID. That's the post-COVID landscape. So as I said, during COVID-19, all training moves online, both Archer 2 and the MSc. The Archer 2 session just started. As I said, the technology makes this simple in practice. We have live 2-way audio and video, and fortunately, by that date, people could, even working from home, people had the ability to do that with broadband. We have supported chat sessions and breakout rooms, which in principle allow you to try and replicate the hands-on experience with a tutor in the room. It may seem a trivial point, but I think we're in a very lucky position as a computing training, that your practicals are already 100% online. You may have people sitting in a room doing the practicals, but that's irrelevant. They're accessing machines which are remote. They're downloading stuff from the web. It's almost zero effort to at least transfer them to online. So in fact, that was the biggest issue for people who were doing things like wet lab or anything, any physical experiment. And from a physics background, it's very difficult to roll a buggy down an inclined plane if you're online. So you can, that was quite fortunate for us actually. But my main question is an intensive multi-day course the right format? That's the obvious thing you do. You take your 3-day course and you then deliver it online in 3 days. Is that really the right thing to do? So on my side here, is online HPC training special? I don't think so. This is compared to, for example, any other computing training. Is the fact that it's high performance computing make it any different? Well, no, because our typical format is lecture, hands-on, lecture, hands-on. That'd be standard for any computing training course, and programming exercises that are trivial to port. The thing which makes HPC training different is you need to provide access to, say, a platform like Archer 2. It's not like it's like an software carpentry course where, by definition, you're really trying to get people to make the most of their laptop. We need to provide access to something like Archer 2. Now, we were lucky. This is a very well-oiled process, and what we do, as I'll set up my colleague Claire, is that basically each course is set as a separate project, and this has a whole bunch of advantages. It gives the person running the course becomes the principal investigator, which hijacks normally these projects would be for a research grant. You're given a research grant to have access to Archer 2, the PI becomes the project manager, and they can give out accounts to their people, postdocs, colleagues. We just hijacked that, and the course organizer becomes the PI for this short-term project. And this was very well documented. Some users need personal help. There's always different. You still have to support Mac, Linux, Windows platforms from the client side. And so we did use personal help. But this is where breakout sessions and screen sharing really comes into its own. If you can just watch somebody trying to log on, you can spot immediately what their mistake was. There was a worldwide vulnerability exploited in, was it mid 2020, to do with SSH keys, where people were getting unauthorized access to HPC systems. We had to then up our security measures, which made logging on much more difficult. But we had pre-sessions. We would say, look, if you're having trouble, so we could give people accounts days in advance, weeks in advance of the course, and they could then come along to a hands-on session to try and get access. But their breakout sessions and screen sharing are absolutely essential for solving those practical problems where you look over somebody's. But that's okay there, because you've already sieved out 80% of people get on because of the documentation. You only have to deal with 20% of people who have particular issues. So post-COVID, we resumed face-to-face training, but we're doing a lot more online than pre-COVID. My main point is that during COVID and afterwards, there was an awful lot of discussion about best technologies. And went to endless meetings where people discussed the pros and cons of Teams and Zoom in terms of the way they work. We used Collaborate simply because it was supported by the university. So we used it for our MSc teaching, so why not use the same platform? To be honest, I found them all rather similar. People got quite obsessed with the technology. I really didn't. As long as you could share the screen, do audio and video and have a breakout room, wasn't that, I think I used all of these at some point. So I think the big question going forward is what's the right balance, but also what have we learned about the best delivery formats? What worked and what didn't work during this. And this is very much a personal opinion. I'm not saying this is definitive, but so the options are, maintain the intensive delivery, just do consecutive days, and this is what we did right at the start. My experience is that you get kind of burnout. People, attendees and lecturers experience burnout. Well, you might say why, it's exactly, especially on the trainer side, it's just the same number of lectures and the same number of days. But I think you don't get this downtime chatting to other attendees at coffee and lunch. That is the thing which you don't get. And I found ways of replicating this online not particularly useful. I know there are things like, I can't remember what it's called, the gamification thing you wander around and you can check out, I can't remember what the platform is called. Sorry? Gather Town, yes. That was the only one I saw where what you want, why coffee sessions and lunch sessions are good is that you can basically go up to somebody and say, oh, hi, how are you doing? Or somebody can come up to you, how are you doing? Yeah. And then they can ask you a technical question. They don't have to, they can just chat to you and then lead into the, I guess it's like going to the doctor with one thing and then telling them what's really wrong with you. But it is that informal stuff which is really useful. And that, just, having a formal breakout room, and, doesn't really work. It doesn't work. And Gather Town, I know that a colleague, Veronica, did run some courses within Gather Town and found it quite, I was surprised, I was quite skeptical, but we did use Gather Town. I think it was on one of the international HPC summer schools, and I was surprised how well it worked, I have to say. I was surprised. Still not as good as okay. But I think this again is one of these things that's very obvious, but this intensive delivery model is entirely based on physical travel. Basically, if you're going to come to a course on using Archer 2 or HPC carpentry or software carpentry in Edinburgh, these courses are meant to be, well, for us, they're national courses. We have to make them accessible to people everywhere. So they would have to travel. We do go around the country a lot. We go to colleagues of mine teaching in London last week, or we've been teaching in Wales, Swansea, and other places. But people have to travel, and so have an intensive course because it minimises travel and accommodation costs and time away from home. You're not going to come up to Edinburgh from anywhere in the UK other than maybe somewhere close in the Central Belt for 3 Wednesdays in a row. It's just not possible to do. And so it's the only way to enable long non-local attendees. So that is, this intensive delivery model is really based on this, people having to travel. And we don't use it for most university courses. Most university courses are, 3 lectures a week kind of thing. Or myself and colleague Mark now are teaching my message passing course is all of Friday morning, but it's all of Friday morning over 10 weeks in a row. So this was what a lot of people did, and we did at the start. But it doesn't. There's no need to do it now because there's no overhead in time and money of people attending the course. Or they may be different. The barriers may be different. So if you do synchronous delivery, I very much went for live as opposed to recorded lectures. I think attendees feel more engaged, and it allows for some interaction. You can do quizzes and polls, just like I did at the start, to get people engaged. The cons of live delivery are that it's more effort from the lecturer. And I'll come back to this, but if you're not going to encourage questions during lectures, you could argue that you could just use recordings. You could do a high quality recording and just say, watch this recording, and I'll answer questions in chat or something. And you tell people you can even watch in advance. You can have a sort of, people got a flipped classroom. You say, look, these lectures are there. You watch them, and we'll use the live sessions purely to answer questions. In practice, that doesn't work, I don't think. People don't watch the lectures in advance. People's lives are too busy for that. And I find this timetable sorts of being very awkward on that. It worked okay, but on one of the courses we did, we'd say hi to people, right, the next half hour, you're going to watch this video. It's a half an hour long about programming or whatever. Then I'll take questions in chat. We'll discuss it at the end. I didn't really work. I don't think. I think students. I just find it a strange hybrid, and I didn't. So I'm not saying for synchronous delivery. Obviously, for asynchronous, there's no option. But for if you're there to answer questions, I think you might as well give the lecture. Because access to the trainer is the thing. We always, I always say at the start of courses, these slides are on the web, the exercises are on the web, and there will be recorded versions of these talks for you to look at. Take advantage, ask questions. I'd rather talk about something slightly different that's useful to you than just go through all the slides. Hope you're not feeling that just now. Now, synchronous delivery, okay, so we're going to do live lectures. Do you do long thing versus short format? And we tried this. I definitely went to things like what you saw. Even actually, our original course, online MPI, was every Wednesday afternoon for 4 weeks. I very much went to say every Tuesday for 3 weeks, or every Monday and Wednesday afternoon for 3 weeks. I think that was a better format. The pros are there's much more time for people to assimilate or review the materials. You don't have this. If you have a 3-day solid course and someone falls a bit behind on the first day, just because of their background, they're then behind. They don't understand any of the second or third day. But if they've got a week to assimilate the material, which is the university lecture model, come to the lecture, try and understand. If you don't, you can go away and catch up. There's that. There's much more time for attendees to attend practicals in between the sessions. The practical sessions don't become quite so compressed. And it's much more relaxed with less burnout for all concerned. It's a bit more effort, but it's the downside are it is quite hard to provide practical support in between the sessions. You're saying to people, look, in between the 2 sessions every Wednesday afternoon, if you have problems, come back to us. Online chat boards kind of help, but they're very difficult. We also, for a while, had online office hours. We used to offer this for all our online courses. Actually, if you have any questions, drop in at 2 o'clock on Thursday, and one of us will be online to answer questions. That we only had limited success, and again, that feeds back to what I should have known this. What Elspeth and Martin found back in 1997, that people didn't tend to make use of this. And also, attendance may not be available for every session. I mean, you could argue about the solid 3 or 4 days, but recordings do help. I did find people were actually, in this distributed format, people were really appreciated the lectures being up the next day, because then they could catch up if they something they'd missed. And so I think that worked. And again, come back to it. Possibly my only vaguely original point for this talk is that a lot of the chat and discussions were about the technology, but I think simple things like do you split it, do it long and thin rather than short and fat. You have that option for online, and I think there's lots of ways of doing it that help. Again, simple things, scheduling of lectures and practicals. Face-to-face, I typically do a lecture practical, with each session around 45 minutes. That would be sort of, lecture, practical, coffee, lecture, practical, lunch, lecture, practical, tea, lecture, practical, end of day. Online, I really found that bunching them up helps. Lecture, practical. People maybe have other stuff to do. I know you'd like to think that people attending an online course is dedicated, but in practice, especially during COVID, people are juggling huge numbers of things. It gave people more flexibility. Also easier to schedule lectures. And of course, remember we have one lecturer, but we'll have multiple demonstrators to help out in the practical session. So I find this simple shift of batching it up into lecture, practical, not lecture, practical, was better, and it was less awkward of that sort of small gap where people sort of felt they ought to be there. You can say, look, now we're going to, my next lecture is going to be after lunch, but this session, the next hour and a half or whatever, is dedicated to doing the practice. So I found that worked a lot better. So I mean, that was a very, very short, small change, but I felt it helped a lot in terms of the synchronous delivery model. So of course, the standard format is just what we did is we just gave our slide-based material online. Why? How about using complete new form? Well, the software data HPC Carpentry have pioneered a much more, interactive, all material online on the web with no classical slides, and basically you're taken through the courses as kind of hands-on walkthrough. That works very well, obviously, for the software data HPC Carpentry courses. Had a lot of work put into them. The material is ideally suited to online delivery. I know there are parts of the Carpentry model, the more interactive things with sticky notes and things like that, maybe harder to replicate, but the material is perfectly, and live coding is always a good thing. Live coding keeps people engaged, good idea for all practice. I think that was the other thing I learned was that basically people really, really liked having done a practical, seeing you have a bash at it, not just say here's the solution, but either code it live or even just compile and run it, go through it live. That people really liked that. That was by far the most interactive sessions I got, was where I was coding live with all the mistakes that you have. But people pick up tips and things, and just little tips, and you learn things from users. I mean, I learned if you're using the slur and batch system, which we use on almost all our systems, if you do SQ, shows you all the jobs in the queue, you get about 50 pages of output. So you have to do SQ minus this user DSH for me, okay, which is annoying. And it's hard to put that, but then someone to SQ minus me gives you all your jobs. I didn't know that, but I found that on a training session. I thought that's interesting. So just seeing somebody do something is really, really useful. So again, like I would say that the two changes I made, which made the most difference, were 3 changes: not doing solid days, if possible, batching the things up into bigger chunks, and then doing much more live coding. And the ideal thing is that somebody else shares their example. Getting the attendees to share their example. That doesn't always work. Of course, the cons are development costs for new material. If you have a classic lecture, practical format maybe derived from a university training course, that's harder to do. And it is still very hard to replicate the one-to-one assistance of the face-to-face format. You can do breakout rooms. That's what you do, but it is quite tough, because you can't have that just looking over somebody's shoulder and, oh, I think maybe you want to do that. And also, the thing when you do the big thing about live training in a classroom is that people learn from each other. The little silly errors that people make. You've got a table of 4 people. One of them will have worked it out and tell the other people. So you always have that triage. That 3/4 of the problems are solved by people just sitting together. And yeah, I know you can put people into breakout rooms and such like. I find that, well, I would say painful. I just find that does not work. Okay, that does not work. The virtual table breakout doesn't work that deep, but it's really quite a surprise actually when you do an online course. You forget how many problems are solved by people just chatting to their neighbour. Asynchronous delivery is fully pre-recorded lectures, or this tailor-made MOOC, as we saw. The pros are, and this is what we call online MSc. It's very cost-effective for the material developed. You can teach a large number of students. It's very accessible. People can you don't have any time zone issues. If people have, you can have subtitles. Definitely, I noticed that in the MOOC, the first thing that people picked up on the MOOC was if a video didn't have a transcript, actually not subtitles, not closed captions, transcripts. Although a lot of non-native English speakers on the course, if we missed a couple of transcripts, and that was picked up immediately. There's no transcript for this lecture. Okay, you can't, and people, often you're reviewing material, having a transcript is fantastic. You can just look through it. The closed captions aren't so useful because you have to watch it pace for lecture. Recordings are hard to edit. It's very easy to edit a slide. It's a much bigger barrier to entry to editing a recording. Limited interaction with attendees and staff, and there's only limited success with online office hours. We found that not particularly useful. Solutions: we have chatbots and regular tutorials for the MSc, but that's different because the MSc is a coherent bunch of students who get to know each other over many years. But this cohort model, which is the future of MOOC, where you just say to people, we did try this with the MPI course or the OpenMP course once. Said, look, it's fully online, but if you sign up and start now, we will provide support for you, and that worked reasonably well. But I think this cohort model of having a course which you can, in principle, take at any time, encouraging people to take it together, works really, really well, because you get some level of mutual support from the students. And so this is one of our self-service courses. Now this was we ported to this was originally hidden deep in the university's VLE, but we've ported it to a sort of a carpentry-like thing, which we it's called Code Refiner from a Nordic group. So again, finally, diversity inclusion. This is my opinion, right? So I would say don't be worried about declining attendance. You saw in the MOOC that 9 out of 10 people didn't complete. If you told me before I started the MOOC that 300 people would get to the end of a sort of 5-week course on supercomputing, I'd been astonished. I thought it would be 3. So, I think that is, and the one thing I always say is online makes attendance more diverse in terms of backgrounds and such like. Because if you have a course and you think, I'm 50-50 chance I might be interested in that, you're not going to take 3 days off and travel up to Edinburgh, especially all the mod costs and such like. However, you'll register an online course. If after the first morning you think, well, that was interesting, but not for me, great, that's fine. You've learned something. Yeah. If your colleague then says, oh, I'm thinking about going on this course, they will actually, it's not what you think it is. Attending a huge commitment to attend an online course, a physical course. So online, you can and so why is that? Because what matters how many finish, not start. Okay, you shouldn't be completely blasé to people dropping out. I appreciate it, but really, if you have a decent number of people finishing the course, that's fine. And those people who turned up and then didn't complete have learned something. Maybe they've learned the basics. As I said, maybe they've learned this isn't going to solve their problems. That's useful. not example. People often think supercomputing is magic, my program will go 10 times faster. When they find out it isn't, that's useful. They can tell their colleagues, actually, it's not going to work, we need to do something else. I see people have other commitments, life, childcare, and so I don't have children, so but I do sympathize with people that have a much more constrained daily timetable than I do. And so recording lectures guards against occasional clashes. So this was the other thing. The two things we really found were A, people really wanted for the MOOC, people wanted transcripts, but people were the lecture didn't go up the next day. People were asking because they wanted to catch up. I couldn't attend that Wednesday afternoon, I'd like to catch up. And I said, ultimately, I was very concerned about closed captions. The increase in the quality of closed captions has been astonishing. Clearly in the early days, well, even 4 or 5 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, they were working word by word. So if they got a word wrong, if it was an ambiguity, they would pick the wrong one. Now there's clearly a huge amount of contextual information. If there's an ambiguity, the system kind of, well, it's kind of a computing lecture. It's not probably, computer, not controller. And the quality is just gone, it's astonishing now. Sorry, compared to what it was 4 or 5 years ago. And I guess it's the AI, it's that contextualization. It's not a blind word by word replacement. There's this contextualization. So again, closed captions. And as I said, if you can generate transcripts from the closed captions, that is a massive benefit. People find that they really find that, really appreciate that. Other people I know have different views. That's my personal opinion. We worked with a project partner who also did a lot of very high quality online training, but their model was live delivery, but no questions answered by the lecturer until the end. They didn't want the lecture to be interrupted. They had people answering questions in chat offline. I find that strange. That's not the way I think I should, And also they had mandatory attendance. They were very keen on people. I think, again, mandatory attendance for online courses is kind of meaningless. It means you log on in the morning. And again, I had a discussion with them that I think that the fact that people are dropping out is not necessarily a bad thing, but they had a very different view. And their other argument was that you have to bring up enough demonstrators to cope with the people who are registered. That's fine, but they're not traveling. If you say, well, we'd expected 50, we've got 20, you tell, oh, you two guys, you don't have to do that. You can do something else. Oh, fine, it's fine. I'm at home. What do I care? Whereas if you've traveled all the way to London from Edinburgh, if you have half the people turning up you expected, you've just paid for 2 or 3 demonstrators to go there and do nothing. So it's great. So my conclusions, such as they are, online, there's a wide range of delivery styles, and I think we do need to exploit. We must exploit these, play around and see what works. I was always surprised at how little discussion there was of these higher level issues, and I found that these simple ideas of long and thin courses, not short and fat, and blocking things up worked. People often got focused by these particular technologies. I think, but I mean, going back to the core, good material and good training are even more important online. I think you need to be engaged, open, and enthusiastic, and I say really encourage people to ask questions. And so things like these little polls and things, even just yes/no questions, are really, really useful. Just just a quick little. That would be one thing I would say that would differentiate the online platform: the ability to very quickly kick up a "What do you think?" ABC, often maybe in response to a question of something like that. That is really useful. Quickly and with a low overhead, kick up a little question. Or have little questions you can just pull from a behind. It's really, that gets people involved. They type things in, and then it generates discussion. They should, of course, be anonymous. All these quizzes need to be anonymous online, so people can just say what they think. And I said, post-COVID, as I said, I think reacting to the situation is a good thing. If you're just reading a script, I think you might as well pre-record. That's my opinion. So all online and no face-to-face is not a good situation, and we've gone back. But post-COVID, I think we've been doing a lot. I think pre-COVID, at least from the EPCC point of view, we were probably more than 90% face-to-face. And I think, well, I don't know, 50-50 model is probably, I need to speak to Juan for what his plans are for after 2, but that would be closer to the model than what we had before. So apologies that I've gone for so long. Thanks for listening.